Hey everybody, there's been a few requests for a demonstration on how to trim hydrangeas. Instead of just talking about it, today's the day I'm actually going to do it. So I'm going to start with these Annabelles right here. Annabelles, Incredibles, Invincibles, those are all arborescent varieties and they're all kind of trimmed the same way. So it is a little bit earlier than we would normally trim them. Usually we wait until the leaves are kind of really ugly and looking bad, but it's okay to trim them now because we've been having a lot of frost, so they're going to be looking pretty rough in just a couple days anyway. So it's going to be just fine. So here goes. I found that with this type of hydrangea, using a hedger or a pair of garden shears is so much easier than using hand snips. And when it comes to how much to trim off, I cut them back to about 6 inches from the ground. Some people prefer to only cut off the top third of the plant. Meanwhile, others cut them back right down to the ground. The good news is that no matter how far you cut them back, you're not going to kill your hydrangea. That said, you may choose to experiment with different heights just to see what kind of results you get. So after my initial round with the hedge trimmer, I can see the areas that I need to go in and clean up a little bit more, pieces that I missed. Also, if you've got wires, be really careful. You don't want to get the hedge trimmer near those under no circumstances. And also I realized how much you can hide with the Annabelle. So there's some bags of lava rock, had these garden tiles, there was a step back here, all kind of brush, all kinds of good stuff. And then also it shows you how good Annabelles can be at hiding maybe unattractive foundations, that type of thing. So I'm going to need to go through and do some cleanup, then I'll just kind of rake through everything and I'll be all set with this section. So now I can just go in with my trimmers here and just get some of the ones that maybe I couldn't get close enough. And sometimes I leave the stems right in here. Here's one that needs a little trim. And I'm going to make a confession here. I didn't just use my pop-up bag. For this job, it was a little bigger than the pop-up bag for my waist, so I ended up filling the gator. So I had a lot of hydrangeas in there, and there's still more to do. This one here is a bigleaf hydrangea, also known as a macrophylla, and specifically it's an endless summer original. So any of the endless summer ones are going to fall into this category, as well as some of the Let's Dance series from Proven Winners. With these, we cut off the flowers, but we don't do anything with the branches at all, because this one blooms mostly on old wood, although a lot of the varieties bloom on old and new. For maximum flowers, we just leave it as it is. Now, if we wanted to tidy it up a bit, if we had a branch that was rogue, we could trim that back, that type of thing. But otherwise, we generally just leave them as they are, which tends to end up giving us the most blooms for next year. The third variety are the panicle shaped ones, or paniculata. Those have the cone shaped flowers that usually start out white and then turn pink or red. And that would include things like your vanilla strawberries, limelights, firelights, quick fires. There's a lot in this category. And for these, when they're small plants, I usually use my bypass trimmers. When they get bigger, like this one here, a lot of times I'll just use the hedge trimmers and trim off about a third, which basically means cutting off the flowers. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use these bypass cutters just to show you specifically how you can do it if you want to be really precise with how you're doing it. And this is specifically how I prune. Different people will tell you different things. That's okay. Generally, these are really resilient to pruning. So I've heard of people cutting it right back almost to the bottom and it still came back. So you don't have to worry too much about killing it. It's just about getting the best looking plant for next season. So for this variety, I start at the flower head and then I follow the stem down. Now this is a little tricky to do from this angle with only one hand, but what I do from here is I find out where it meets up with the rest of the branch. Then I count the leaf nodes, and I usually count 3. 1, 2, 3, and then I cut it off right there. And then I'll do that with the next one. 1, 2, 3. And then I'll just keep going around the entire shrub. So you can see this is where it was cut last year. We got 2 branches off of that, and I did go 3 leaf nodes from that. Now you could go 4, you could even go 2. I wouldn't go less than that. It all depends on how tight and bushy you want your shrub. Now if you need to do a hard pruning, you can trim it way, way back, but generally we kind of do it this way. Sometimes the best way to get a sense of how a hydrangea behaves after you trim it is to see some examples. So I have a couple of hydrangeas that we trimmed earlier in the season, and I'm going to show you exactly what they did shortly after trimming. Earlier in the season, I had shown you some hydrangea trees where the flower heads had gotten so big we were worried that the wind and rain would cause them to break the branches on these young trees. So we had cut the tips off of them, and I wanted to show you what happened after we did that. So anytime you trim a hydrangea, usually initiate some new growth. So you can see on this one, the trim was up here, and just below that, we started getting some new branches developing. And if you want to see a really fine example, we trimmed it there, and look at that crazy growth up there. So the hydrangeas do respond well to some trimming, and we had one where the hydrangea tree, we brought it out, and the weather was really bad, really wet, and it broke right below the branch line. There were no branches on it at all. And good news, we brought it in and it has taken off. So you can see right here is where the break happened, right in there. And you can see how healthy those new branches that came up and how well it recovered from that. Now, once it goes dormant, I'm going to go in and give this a little trim, and we're going to use that whole method of counting the leaf nodes. So from here, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to trim it right above that third one, and I'll do that on all 3 of those. And next year it's going to branch out from there, and it's going to be a little bit shorter than the other hydrangea trees, but it's going to look just fine. And in 2 years it's going to be a fantastic looking hydrangea tree. So by knowing that hydrangeas respond well to trimming, we're going to tackle this hydrangea tree right behind me. We got this from another grower, and we're not real thrilled with how they had trimmed it. They had just topped it, and as a result, it's been really bare at the bottom, and it's only getting a couple of leaf sets up at the top. So we're going to give it a hard prune, and hopefully that's going to reset it, so it's going to be a bushier, fuller tree next year. So I'm going to show you where we're going to do those cuts. So based on how we trim those other hydrangeas, we would actually start our trimming and pruning way up here, but instead we're going to come all the way down to the base, and we're going to look kind of for those leaf sets. They're a little harder to see in the woody area, so I'm just going to kind of estimate, or I'm going to look at this one actually because it's easier to see. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to trim that right off. And then I'm going to trim the other ones kind of in a similar spot along the leaf nodes. Sorry, I should get these out. If I had 2 hands, it'd be a little easier. So I'm just going to be trimming these off. So this is a much more aggressive trim. Hopefully it responds well. Sometimes you just need to do this to get the effect that you want. And so you can see now when I'm done with it, we just went from a gargantuan tall tree to a very short one, and my hope is that we're going to see new growth coming out towards the bottom here. So that's a couple of hydrangeas down, just a couple thousand more to go. But I am going to wait until they go dormant before I do the other ones, especially the ones in the greenhouses. They're protected from the cold. They're going to stay leafy, and their flowers are going to stay nice for quite a while yet, so we don't have to worry too much about those. And remember, you can prune hydrangeas either in the fall or in the spring. It's not going to make too much of a difference. A lot of people advocate for spring pruning. We do it in the fall because we know it's easier on our schedule. Our spring schedule just doesn't allow us to come out. Just remember that you want to do it before they start leafing out, or really close. When you first see buds, you really should get out there and get those trimmed up. So I hope this helps. The visual aids are always a great help for most people. So good luck, everybody, and I'll talk to you very soon.